What was that website? It's like, is the KOF 15 matchmaking working? There's literally a website with like a countdown timer that some folks made about KOF 15's matchmaking still not working, and how many days it's been that it's not working. Is KOF 15 matchmaking still broken.com? Wow! Holy shit! It was right! Is KOF 15 matchmaking still broken.com? Yes! It's been broken since release day, February 17th, 79 days. What is going on? Since 15's been released, a large amount of players are unable to find opponents online or have to wait 30 minutes when queuing up for ranked matches. True. And not just on PC, not just on PS4, PS5. It's still an issue. Players have paid $60 for the game and are unable to match up with opponents online and therefore unable to play the game at all. The game's developer has remained silent regarding any progress, issue, or priority, and there's no fix in sight. I think they've mentioned something at this point, and the game is effectively non-functional for those users. They're not wrong, right? They're not wrong. This is a problem. And the fact that it has been going on for so long is absolutely ridiculous. It's a testament to how important matchmaking actually is for fighting games, which is the whole like topic of a quick conversation I want to have. And it's been this thing that has been in my headscape for a very long time. And I believe the first game that actually made me realize how important matchmaking is was technically Pokken, believe it or not. It's an issue that still goes on to this day, where it feels like so many fighting games are spending so much of their time not getting me to fight the next person, you know, just getting me to the point where we can fight somebody else immediately with as little delay as possible. And yes, matchmaking is a huge part of that. And it's not just the fact that we're just going to try to match you up with somebody else that is of your skill level. That's just like basic matchmaking functionality. Something that still is not working in KOF 15 to this day, which is crazy. But also the speed at which it happens and how frequently it can happen, right? So why do I use Pokken as an example? Simply put, when we played Pokken back in, good lord, what is it, 2016? 2017, whenever the hell Pokken first came out on the sweet Jesus, it was the Wii U, for Christ's sake. It must have been 2016. Pokken drops, and I'm like, this game's kind of fun. It's different, it's weird, it's not something I really get into, but it is kind of crazy. But the thing that I had a giant takeaway from playing Pokken was after the match was over, and after the match completed, you could click a few options, which was like either return to training, I think, back to main menu, or search for next opponent. And this was right after, like, my character's win screen is there, Blaziken just blew up Pikachu or some shit, lit his ass on fire, and then the game is asking me to search for next opponent. And guess what? Within a few seconds of me pressing that button, bam, I have immediately loaded up the next fight and I am fighting the next person. It was crazy, to the point where I was like, holy crap. This makes me realize how much time we spend in fighting games waiting for matchmaking to do its thing or doing other things before we even get to the point of matchmaking. Granted, in that situation, Pokken was having very functional matchmaking. It was working. Bandai Namco's matchmaking usually resulted in some pretty good results at that time. Regardless of like the netcode having issues in the large variety of their fighting games, here's what's crazy. Matchmaking can mask bad netcode. Believe it or not. How does that happen? And how was that even happening for somebody like me that was playing Pokken when we were quickly getting matched with people? Well, number one, you need a lot of people. You need a game to be relatively new, for there to be more people in general, and you need there to be a large pool of players to choose from. Rollback can actually help with that because it expands the pool. It makes the options that you have bigger. But even in a situation like, you know, back in Pokken, Smash, like games that do not have rollback netcode, games that are delay-based netcode, you can feel like your online experience with some of those games is better than even games with rollback netcode because the matchmaking is only giving you at times the people that have good connections. But there's a caveat to this. It breaks down completely if the game is not specifically popular, if the player pool has dropped down a bunch, and there's just less people to play with, then the netcode is going to really start rearing its head. If you don't have somebody to play that's essentially right next door to you, oh my god, it's going to be a huge problem. And you're going to start to see how bad the delay can really get. But this is why a lot of people genuinely think that, and I don't agree with this. I think Street Fighter V's netcode has issues. but I think it's way better than Street Fighter 4. This is why a lot of people feel that Street Fighter 4's netcode experience was actually better than even some other rollback games. Why is that? Because the matchmaking had more people to choose from, and it was essentially working. It was working as intended. They had a point system. They had ways that you can evaluate players based on one person being good enough with one character. There was enough stuff to populate its matchmaking servers to get people into a spot where you could feel like, hey, you know what? The netcode on this game's pretty good. Bitchin' netcode, man. I definitely fell prey to that 100%. But at some point, right, the player pool, beyond the first month, the few months after, when there's not as many people playing your fighting game, you're going to run into situations where, yeah, the matchmaking is just going to have way less people to pick. This is how important matchmaking can be. It can be the make it or break it situation for a lot of games. And when the matchmaking doesn't work, it's painfully obvious. I can't tell you how many fighting games I have just stopped playing because I can't stand the online and or the matchmaking. If it just turns into a game that I'll haphazardly jump in and try out every once in a while, or I just like, you know what? I don't even want to spend time getting good with any of these characters because it's just going to lead to an online experience that pisses me off. That usually isn't just the netcode, it's the matchmaking as well. I know I've been attacking a lot of things on fighting games over the past few months, but we're like on the cusp of getting into the actual next generation of fighting games, like the PlayStation 5 and beyond. The new generation of fighting games is right around the horizon. And I think tackling the things that still suck and can still be issues, even at this point, the most basic of functionalities that we're still asking for is still a thing, to the point where now, yes, KOF 15, a giant game from SNK that seemingly worked pretty hard on its rollback netcode, and has come to a pretty good result. Its netcode is an absolutely incredible rollback, but it's way better than anything they've ever had before, and it's a completely functional online experience. The matchmaking is a completely different story, and those are different things. The netcode and the matchmaking are generally different things of you getting paired up with people that should have decent connections and similar skill levels. And I can't help but mention Guilty Gear Strive as well, because Guilty Gear Strive was a game that really had a solution for this, at least in its first few months, where that tower system, that heaven system, when there was more people playing Guilty Gear than there had ever been in the history of Guilty Gear in mid 2021 to like fall of 2021, a way that they were keeping people in similar skill check with each other because there was a lot of people playing. The lobbies, however, are a completely different story and unrelated to what I'm even talking about. But their way of effectively matching you with people felt like Guilty Gear matchmaking theory was get the noobs the hell away from veteran Guilty Gear players or veteran fighting game players. Get them the fuck away from these lower floors. The only problem is that worked out. I think that actually had a big impact on what a lot of people felt about Guilty Gear Strive, especially in the first couple months. But over time, as things empty out, as less people play the game, as there is not going to be nearly as many people pulling the draw as the first few months of a fighting game is out, it gets to be extremely barren. And now the floor system technically comes as a detriment because you could be stuck at somewhere in between and it's just a ghost town, and you might have to wait for prime hours of people playing games, like off work hours, off school hours, to hopefully run into somebody in your floor and actually rank up beyond that floor. Granted, like, there's options beyond it. If people like ranked, people like ranked, but that's the bigger issue with their ranked now, is that without people there, it sort of is a problem. There are answers to this, and I think that not enough fighting game devs prioritize some of these issues that fighting games have, and what's funny is they're all related. They all fix each other's problems. Rollback netcode, crossplay, and matchmaking, right? All these things work together to provide an experience that hopefully should alleviate the lowest level player to the highest level player. The biggest issue is that getting all those three things in tandem with each other working for even one fighting game is difficult, and has not really happened for a lot of fighting games. And why do they work together? Well, number one, if the game has good netcode, rollback netcode, the amount of people that you can actually fight against is bigger. There's just way more people to choose from. Two, if the game has crossplay, that means that that pool of people that you play through or play from expands exponentially with every single other version you're playing with, whether it's on Xbox or PC or PlayStation or Switch or anything like that. If they all work in tandem with each other, there are substantially more people that you can actually get to fight at any general point that might suck as much as you or be on the highest tier level of whatever champion status the game might actually be. There is a chance between all that. And if the game has a matchmaking system that is functioning, that is actually looking at everything and being like, well, these people are around this level, this person's around that level, how quickly can this thing do the thing to get these other two fucking things to work together? If all these things are doing the things that they can do, that is a genuinely amazing online experience. It's something where you don't have to spend too much time. It's something where you can play almost anyone from anywhere at any given time, even for a relatively unpopular, like middle of the road game, not like a giant Dragon Ball or a Tekken or a Street Fighter. There will always be certain levels to get in there. And granted, if there was one thing, if like the multiplayer of the fighting game was free to allow for low-level people to always be populating that costs nothing, that's like a whole other story. You know, a whole other story if the game offered something like that. There is some games that have tried to address this stuff, to make all this stuff quick, and not all the pieces are in place, but when some pieces are in place, we have a few examples, right? Killer Instinct still to this day has noobs, and it's nuts. It has noobs because, number one, the definitive edition is available for free on Xbox Game Pass, if you have Game Pass. The game had a rotating character and all that kind of stuff that was free. It's still crazy that I can jump online at 8 p.m. at night and run into noobs in KI. And why am I getting matched up with a noob? Well, that's once again a matchmaking issue, but there's at least a barrier of entry that allows for that stuff to happen. The speed at which the matchmaking can actually happen is also super important. And that's where games like Pokken and people are going to hate me for saying this, and I use this example a lot, Marvel Infinite had a couple of pretty good answers for this shit. MVCI had an option where, and even KOF 15 technically does as well, MVCI had a noob rank option where when you first jump into the matchmaking, you essentially get an option to play against other new players. If there was new players when the game was relatively fresh when it first came out, then you would not be burdened by the people that are super fucking good and just get blasted. The other thing that MVCI also conveniently did that everyone's gonna hate that I say is that they also had a similar function to Pokken. When you were finished with your ranked match, the match ended, your character win screen came up, and then there was one button at the top that said search for next match. And the screen didn't go anywhere. They didn't load up anything. You just looked at the exact same window. The next match started searching. And if there was people playing in ranked, which there was quite a bit at launch at least, I was getting matches within seconds. And bam, next match is loading, bam, I'm playing again. It was absolutely fucking wonderful. We didn't have to load up a character select screen or go back to training mode or go back to main menu or any of that bullshit. So matchmaking working as intended. Why is KOF 15's matchmaking still broken? How is it that we're at this state where the game has, this game actually has mostly super functional online elements, right? This game has a great lobby system with a lot of options. This game has ranked and technical player matches that you can play through. All these things are in place. It has rollback netcode. It doesn't have crossplay, unfortunately. But I give this game, at least when it first came out, a lot of credit that it's like, yeah, you know what? Like, I'm actually kind of surprised how many things they put into KOF 15's online. It's actually kind of dope. And then it all completely breaks down when you fight the same one dude that has been playing KOF for 30 fucking years, and you won't get anybody else for some reason. I'm like, what? Was running into an experience where you're getting the most veteran KOF players in the world, or you're getting the cat and or dog that have piloted the arcade stick at this point. I'm like, what the f? This is a huge problem for fighting games too. And the problem with it is that it still needs, matchmaking needs this thing, it needs rollback netcode, it needs things like crossplay, and it needs actual functioning matchmaking to all work in tandem with each other. Like, all these things benefit each other, and they technically need each other to work. And the problem is that it's so fucking hard to at least get like one of these goddamn things in fighting games that it is super frustrating. Much less 2, much less 3. Eventually we'll get there, right? Eventually, at some point, this game will get its matchmaking fixed, and at least it'll occupy a couple of these spaces. The problem is, a first impression is a big deal, and a lot of damage has been done as a result of this. I know a lot of friends that really like KOF 15, and a lot of people that I've heard that really enjoy this game that have completely dropped off of it because of matchmaking. And I've also heard the same thing from even games like Guilty Gear Strive and the way its lobby system and matchmaking kind of works, where people just want to have to not really deal with some of this stuff that they're doing. And I'd say for me personally, I stopped caring about like getting into heaven and stuff like that when I had to deal with the goddamn game's lobby system and its ranked matchmaking for Guilty Gear. It was just so much easier just to go into rooms and do stuff. Yes. Matchmaking is still an issue for fighting games. It's crazy that Wooly's time-old classic of being conducted in an interview of what do we need fighting games to do that'll put it on the same level of other games? Work. They just need to work.